Welcome back to the SportsMax Zone. On this Tuesday, we turn our focus to cricket and in particular the West Indies women. Their poor form continued with a 3-0 T20 International Series loss to England. Despite England dominating the series, Windies captain Hayley Matthews was named the series MVP. In the three matches, Matthews scored a series-leading 177 runs, but that doesn't show the full picture. Haley's tally eclipsed the total scored by all other Windies batters in the series, while her 30 boundaries amounted to 64% of the Windies total. Essentially, her performances were tantamount to a one-woman show. Now, speaking after the defeat in the second T20 International, Matthews had expressed frustration at the level of expectations demanded of her teammates. Here's what she said. I think it definitely has nothing to do with the effort that they're putting in. We're asking girls who have probably played 30 to 40 domestic games ever in their life, if so much, to come and perform at the international stage. And it's always going to be hard for them and hard to ask coaches as well to come to this level and turn girls into magic when we don't have a proper system to come through. So I think we just have to keep encouraging them as much as possible. It's obviously a steep learning curve, but at the same time, you know the mistakes that they're making. We're all going to learn from them together. Now, joining us on Zoom is our cricket analyst, Nikl Utam Chandani. Nikl, this proper system, as mentioned by Hayley Matthews, what does that really entail?
I think it, first of all, hits the nail on the head, Lance. It's something that we all four have discussed on the show previously. But I think what she talks about is a better pathway and a better system is the word, a better learning space for West Indies women's cricket and cricketers to come back to the Caribbean and to sort of come through in. And look, I'm not a director of cricket. I've never or don't have any qualifications close to being a director of cricket. However, I think through seeing what has almost worked in the men's game and also just some of my personal observations and opinions, I put together a few points and suggestions that I think we can maybe implement, as well as talking to some people around the region as to how we can progress. So I'm excited for today's discussion.
Yeah, I know that you just referenced the men's game, which obviously is far more advanced infrastructurally than the women's game, but it is a general feeling that the men also have that problem. Wavell Hines had been a co-presenter on this show when we just started back in 2011, and he said repeatedly on the show that based on the structure of West Indies cricket and the infrastructure of West Indies cricket, our players have to learn on the job when they get to the international level, which is the same thing being experienced by the girls now. And I would suggest firmly that the women's situation is even more dire than the men have experienced in the past 20 years. So can you, put your finger on some of these issues that we can start to flesh them out?
I think there was a big deficiency in production of talent, and that came when the High Performance Centre went away. And then you look at the current crop of West Indies players and those that have excelled at the other, probably a higher level than the rest in West Indies cricket, the men's that is, it's the Craig Brathwaite, it's the Jason Holders, Carlos Brathwaite to some extent, who passed through the High Performance Centre firsthand. Then obviously there was a few years where that system was not in place. And now we've almost got to play catch up with the West Indies Academy coming back in. But even I go a step below that and I go to regional cricket at the youth level. There were years where there was no red ball fixtures. There was years where during COVID that, of course, there was no fixtures at all. And I think all those things had a small part to play. Now, in terms of the women, when you think about those problems in the men's setup, obviously we know that would be exaggerated in the women's because they always tend to have these advancements and these new innovations a bit later after they've been tested. And I'm glad to see that in the women's game with equal pay and other things that gap is now closing. But I know today's discussion is solely on the women's. And I want to structure a lot of today on batting because I think when I watch the series, when I think about the problems and the woes of the West Indies women, it's in the batting department and just how we can move forward as a region with more emphasis placed on the small details. I think big picture, it seems like a lot of doom and gloom. And when you look at some of the numbers, I mean, in the T20 Blaze, the local competitions that we have, 16 matches, only 6 scores of over 100, 9 below 90 runs, which are both very, I mean, the 100 runs is the bare minimum. You look at the Super 50, 16 matches, just 2 teams posted over 200 runs batting first. And that in itself it tells you all you need to know about where we're at as a batting unit in women's cricket.
Yeah, but is there an issue though with getting girls to start playing cricket? Because on the male side, you have a regional under 15, regional under 17, a regional under 19. In many instances, both 3-day and 50 over cricket. So there is a structure for the boys as teenagers to be playing quality competitive cricket from below the ages of 15 or below the age of 15. We're not seeing that among the girls, but could that be because they just don't have the players to play in such a tournament?
I think partially it's territory based. I went to Trinidad just now for the breakout T20, and it was refreshing to see, you know, the North Zone and the 19 girls. From my understanding, talking to some personnel there are tournaments in place for, you know, under 19 girls, which something that Barbados, for example, doesn't have. But you look at Barbados, they have got a team competing in the local second division club tournament. And I do think winning has a lot to do with it. When the West Indies won the World Cup in 2016, I think it would have done a lot for inspiring young girls to get into the game. And if we think about since that point, 9 years on, we've not won much in West Indies women's cricket. We've not done much in West Indies cricket on the whole to really inspire that next generation. And when I think about places like St. Kitts, Antigua, I mean, what system is there in place for a young girl to start playing the game? Will she go into a club, which is what I want to get to a bit later on? Will she go into a club system with, you know, 20 males and be brave enough to go in and play cricket? Where is that sort of gap as to maybe I have an inclination to want to play, to try this out? Where do I start? Is it at school with, again, maybe 15 to 16 boys? And maybe that's something that Cricket West Indies needs to look at.
Yeah, and I think that is where I wanted to go, Nikl, with the school system. Because I remember back in primary school, the one that Karishma and I attended, most times she would be the little tomboy girl that would go to play with the boys. It's not something that was in place, you know, if you were, let's just say, a girly girl, and I'm just using that term very loosely and saying, you know, there are steps to take if you want to play cricket professionally. Karishma was just the girl that would play marble pitch with the boys outside or pick up a bat and play, and then she realized that, you know, maybe this is something that I want to do, but I still feel like there isn't that system to allow girls to say, hey, this is a fair opportunity, even if you're not like athletic or anything, there is a place for you to at least try it out.
I think a lot of that, Maria, comes down to the territorial boards. I know, for example, talking to Shakira Selman, who played for the West Indies and is now in an administrative position. For example, the Barbados girls have got practice. They play every weekend. So I think it's a lot easier for a young girl coming out of school or maybe in secondary school to show up at one of those sessions and join in there or even just watch, as opposed to go to a school practice like where Hayley Matthews came out. I remember when I was at school, Hayley Matthews was in sixth form and she was playing with the boys and she was pretty much dominating the boys.
Yeah.
I do think that is an anomaly. I don't think many people will have the courage to do that in today's day and age with social media, with the way that the Gen Zs like myself have come up. So I do think, can we put more systems and teams and clubs in place where there are just a bigger collection of girls playing the sport, regardless of whatever level or what quality they're at, just to maybe break that stigma and fear for a young girl.
Yeah, and you mentioned just now in your response to Lance that, you know, you want to get to a certain place with the points that you have to present to us. So I feel like you can just go ahead and then we'll jump in the conversation.
Right. So a few things I've been thinking about, panel and guys. One of them is talking to Shakira Salman and thinking about some examples like a Hayley Matthews. How can we get a few more of these girls playing cricket, right? Playing more competitive matches. I look at Hayley's comments there. She's saying our girls are only playing 30 or 40 matches coming into an international series. And I look at what happens in my country, Barbados. Each weekend, the girls are playing and competing against male clubs, albeit second division. It's not a high level, but it'll still be a massive step up to what they're used to. And I think the repetition of playing competitive cricket each weekend having to prepare for these games will naturally make a lot of these players better.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it's a case of maybe we introducing this in other territories. I don't know how easy it is. And even if it's not a case of having a whole team, can we mandate that maybe a club can have a girl attached to a few of them? And again, they don't have to play, but I just think about being around a concentrated cricket setup where there's constant discussion and what impact that could potentially have on a young girl who's trying to take up the game for the first time.
Yeah, there's one thing for me, Nikl, because I think there is a slight gap here, and I'll give you my opinion, and then we can take it from there. So while I agree that part of the issue is the amount of cricket a lot of these girls play, and at a particular level as well, that is an issue. But for me, the bigger issue, if not the biggest issue, and this is against the background that I believe the real issue is with batting. Because I don't feel, for example, that we necessarily have as big of an issue with the quality of bowling. I mean, match in, match out, these girls do pretty well with the ball, yeah? The biggest issue that we're having is with the batting. And you look at the statistics that were brought out. Hayley Matthews scored 177 runs in 3 T20 internationals, and that was more than the rest of the entire team. That tells the story of what you need to know. And so from my standpoint, and because I feel that batting is such a specialist art, I don't believe that it's something you can necessarily take up at 15 or 16 or 17 years old. And so I'm wondering, Nikl, how can we get these girls not just to start playing cricket at a younger age, but to start batting? And when I say a younger age, I'm talking about 7, 8, 9, 10 years of age. That is the age that I want our girls to be learning the fundamentals of batting, because I believe that when they get to 16, 17, 18 years old, if they haven't already learned those fundamentals, and if they aren't already at an advanced level, it becomes so difficult in the batting department. Whereas I think you can get massive improvement with bowling, you can get massive improvement with fielding. I just feel with batting, you have to start significantly earlier. And I'm wondering, how do we get these girls to start learning to bat from their 6 and 7 and 8 years of age?
Ricardo, I would ask, are you sure there are girls playing cricket at 6, 7, and 8 years old?
And there goes there goes the problem, Nikl.
I think Hayley Matthews did.
There you go.
I think Hayley Matthews did, Nikl.
As did Stefani Taylor.
My sister as well.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why they look the way they do, and some of the other batters in the West Indies setup look the way they do. If you get my drift.
Well, I hear what you're saying, Ricardo, but maybe then it comes down to more exposure. So you have to go to primary schools. You have
Not
to get
just more, but earlier exposure.
I think like kid camps and stuff, you know, those cricket camps.
Right.
Nikl, if West Indies were to put on those spot talents from a very young age, have, let's just say, a former Windies captain and a Marissa Aguilera, go to some of these camps, and Anissa Mohammed, you know, these things, tell their stories. I think kids love to listen to stories, and I always find those things resonate with them.
And while I hear that, right, and again, I think if I think about a 6, 7, 8-year-old playing cricket, a girl playing cricket at a camp, I think what people are so happy about is that they're just playing. So they don't tell them anything, they just celebrate. So that probably needs to change. But I still believe that enough change can be made. And obviously, Ricardo, in a perfect world, even for the men, I mean, we look at Suryavanshi, who's 14 years old in India. He would have started playing at 4. I see videos on my phone daily of 3-year-olds playing a better cover drive than I have in my 23 years.
Well, that's not
that's
difficult.
too hard. It is. My point being that I still think there can be enough change even in your teenage level. I still think that we can do more as a region to impact and influence more change. And look, I know that this conversation has been a lot of doom and gloom for a West Indies fan. I do think, though, I'm seeing steps being taken in the right direction. And I want to provide some insight on something that I don't think many people know. I know some people are aware that the West Indies have given out a few academy contracts last October. And I wanted to get a better understanding of this process. So basically what's happened is there's not a stable academy, which I think hopefully should change in the future, whereas the boys and men can assemble in Antigua and work collectively at a camp. The girls are not at that stage yet. However, they have been given a stipend monthly to help invest in themselves. They're young, they don't necessarily work, so they can maybe invest in strength and conditioning, personal coaching. But the aspect that excites me is that when a Jazara Claxton, a Mandy Mangro comes home from this series in England, they have now got pathway coaches in each of the territories assigned to work and report to Cricket West Indies weekly with these players. And this is not something that we've had before. So I think if we can develop that discipline from a younger age for the 16, 17, 18-year-olds, when they get to 26 and 27, I hope that then that discipline will translate to the senior level. I only have to look at 20-year-old Zeta James. The way she's improved in 2 years, and I think a lot comes down to a player's responsibility, as much as we talk about the system. But if she could improve that much in 2 years, where she's opening the batting, opening the bowling, and looking like she can be a promising future talent for this team, maybe in 3 to 5 years' time, I think it's possible for others to do it as well. So I'm encouraged by what I hear about the pathway system, but I fully understand your point about getting them exposed at an early age. I think that in itself is a mountain to climb, given the lack of exposure for women's cricket in the region.
I don't know if it is a mountain. I think it is achievable. I just think we need to start getting into the primary schools and the prep schools in a more deliberate way right across the Caribbean. And I don't believe that is being done now, because what that will also do is to increase the pool of players that you have to select from. But if you're waiting until they are 13 and 14 and 15 and 16 years of age, then at that stage, I just think it's a little bit too late. And the only way to raise the entry level is to get these girls playing earlier, Nikl. That's just how I feel about it.
Let me ask you this question, Ricardo. When you and Stefani Taylor go into a school in Jamaica, and maybe you talk to a school and there's 6 girls that come up to you guys after and say, we want to get involved in the sport, then where do they go? What's the next step?
The next step is that you start programs at these schools. You have, well, here you have Cornwall, Middlesex and Surrey as far as counties are concerned. You start programs in the counties, maybe start programs in the parishes, and get these girls and keep the interest, because you will find girls who are interested, but somebody has to start something somewhere. Because the truth is, if we had 3 Hayley Matthews, then this West Indies women's team would be beating many teams in the world. But we only have 1, and that's the problem. We need to find ways to find more than just 1. And before that, it was just Stefan and it was just Deandra. But Nikl, we're out of time. This was fun. We've got to go, though. Hopefully, we'll get to chat about this some more. But this was quite an interesting discussion. And hopefully, one of these days, we can, get someone like Miles Bascom involved, or the Cricket West Indies president. Although I think that some of the things that need to be done go beyond them and precede them as well. But let's leave it there for today, Nikl. We'll chat again soon.
There's light at the end of the tunnel, folks. Stay patient.
Boy,
Thanks, Nikl.
I hope I'll be around when we get to the end of that tunnel. Let's go to a break.